Hello there, listener. So, if you follow this channel, you might know that I'm a big fan of poetry. After all, poetry is older than prose as a form of writing, and it's really. Poetry reflects the origins of human language better than prose, because this sort of rhyme and structure, well, it's how we used to memorize things. Now, I found this poem called Lepanto by J.K. Chesterton recently. It was written in 1915, and of course, Chesterton is quite popular among especially Catholic rightists. And I'll give a bit of my opinion on Chesterton at the end of this, but let me first read you the actual poem. White founts, falling in the courts of the sun, and the Sultan of Byzantium is smiling as they run. There is laughter like the fountains in that face of all men feared. It steers the forest darkness, the darkness of his beard. It curls the blood-red crescent, the crescent of his lips. For the inmost sea of all the earth is shaken with his ships. They have dared the white republics of the capes of Italy. They have dashed the Adriatic round the line of the sea. And the Pope has cast his arms abroad for agony and loss, and called the King of Christendom for swords about the cross. The cold Queen of England is looking in the glass. The shadow of the Valois is yawning at the mass. From evening isles fantastical rings faint the Spanish gun, and the Lord upon the golden horn is laughing in the sun. Dim drums throbbing in the hills half heard, where only on a nameless throne a crownless prince has stared, where, risen from a doubtful seat and half attainted stall, the last knight of Europe takes weapons from the wall, the last and lingering troubadour to whom the bird has sung, that once went singing southward when all the world was young. And that enormous silence, tiny and unafraid, comes up along a winding road the noise of the crusade. Strong gongs groaning as the guns boom far. Don John of Austria is going to the war. Stiff flags straining in the night blast cold, in the gloomed black purple, in the glint of old gold, torchlight crimson on the copper kettle drums, then the tuckets, then the trumpets, then the cannon, and he comes! Don John, laughing in the brave beard he curled, spurning off his stirrups like the thrones of all the world, holding his head up for a flag of all the free. Love light of Spain, hurrah! Death light of Africa, Don John of Austria is riding to the sea. A hound is in his paradise above the evening star. Don John of Austria is going to the war. He moves a mighty turban on the timeless Ori's knees, a turban that is woven of the sunsets and the seas. He shakes the peacock gardens as he rises from his ease, and he strides among the treetops, and it's taller than the trees. And his voice through all the garden is a thunder sent to bring black Azrael and Ariel and Ammon on the wing. Giants and the genii, multiplex of wing and eye, whose strong obedience broke the sky when Solomon was king. They rush in red and purple from the red clouds of the morn, from temples where the yellow gods shut up their eyes in scorn. They rise in green robes, roaring from the green hells of the sea, where fallen skies and evil hues and eyeless creatures be. On them the sea valves cluster, and the grief sea forests curl, splashed with a splendid sickness, the sickness of the pearl. They swell in sapphire smoke out of the blue cracks of the ground. They gather and they wonder and give worship to Mahund, and he saith, break up the mountains where the hermit folk can hide, and sift the red and silver sands, let's bone of saint abide, and chase the Giaours flying night and day, not giving rest. For that which was our trouble comes again out of the west. We have set the seal of Solomon on all things under sun, of knowledge and of sorrow, and endurance of things done. But a noise is in the mountains, and I know the voice that shook our palaces 400 years ago. It is he that saith not Kismet, it is he that knows not fate. It is Richard, it is Raymond, it is Godfrey in the gate. It is he whose loss is Lothar, when he counts the wager worth. Put down your feet upon him, that our peace be on the earth. For he heard drums groaning, and he heard guns jar. for Don John of Austria is going to the war. Southern and still, hurrah! Bold from Iberia, Don John of Austria is gone by Alcalar. St. Michael on his mountain in the sea roads of the north, John of Austria is girt and going forth. Where the grey seas glitter, and the sharp tides shift, and the sea folk labour, and the red sails lift, he shakes his lance of iron, and he claps his wings of stone. The noise is gone through Normandy, the noise is gone alone. The north is full of tangled things, and text and aching eyes, and dead is all the innocence of anger and surprise. And Christian killeth Christian in a narrow dusty room, and Christian dreadeth Christ, that had a newer face of doom. And Christian hated Mary, that God kissed in Galilee. But Don John of Austria is riding to the sea. Don John, calling through the blast and the eclipse, crying with the trumpet of his lips, trumpet that say, Ha! Domino Gloria! Don John of Austria is shouting to the ships. King Philip is in his closet with the fleece about his neck. Don John of Austria is armed upon the deck. The walls are hung with velvet that is black and soft as sin, and little dwarves creep out of it, and little dwarves creep in. He holds a crystal phial that has colors like the moon. He touches and tingles, and he trembles very soon. And his face is as a fungus of a leprous white and grey, like plants in the high houses that are shuttered from the day. And dead is in the phial, and the end of noble work, what Don John of Austria has fired upon the Turk. Don John's hunting, and his hounds have bayed. Booms away past Italy the rumours of his raid. Gun upon gun! Ha ha! Gun upon gun, hurrah! Don John of Austria has loosed the cannonade. The Pope was in his chapel before the day of battle broke. Don John of Austria is hidden in the smoke. The hidden room in man's house where God sits all the year. The secret window whence the world looks small and very dear. He sees in a mirror on the monstrous twilight sea the crescent of his cruel ships whose name is mystery. They fling great shadows foewards, making cross and castle dark. They veil the plumed lions on the galleys of St. Mark, and above the ships are palaces of brown, black-bearded chiefs, and below the ships are prisons, where multitudinous griefs, Christian captives sick and sunless, all a labouring race repines, like a race in sunken cities, like a nation in the mines. They are lost like slaves that swat, and in the skies of morning hung the stairways of the tallest gods when tyranny was young. They are countless, voiceless, hopeless, as those fallen or fleeing on before the high king's horses in the granite of Babylon. And many a one grows witless in his quiet room in hell, where a yellow face looks inward through the lattice of his cell, and he finds his God forgotten, and he seeks no more a sign. But Don John of Austria has burst the battle line. Don John pounding from the slaughter-painted poop, purpling all the ocean like a bloody pirate sloop, scarlet running on the silvers and the golds, breaking the hatches and bursting of the holds, thronging of the thousands up that labour under sea, white for bliss and blind for sun and stunned for liberty. Vivat Hispania, Domino Gloria! Don John of Austria has set his people free. Cervantes on his galley sets the swords back in the sheath. Don John of Austria rides homeward with a wreath, and he sees across a weary land a straggling road in Spain, of which a lean and foolish knight for ever rides in vain. And he smiles, but not as a sultan smiles, and he settles back the blade. But Don John of Austria rides home from the crusade. Well, I thought this was a rather magnificent poem. I didn't know, but in a game that I played when I was quite young, part of this poem was cited in Age of Mythology. The part is, and he strides among the treetops and is taller than the trees, and his voice through all the garden is a thunder sent to bring giants and the genie, multiplex of wing and eye, whose strong obedience broke the sky. This was cited by a Cyclops in the game. And it is, of course, a reference to Cyclopeans. Anyway, my opinion on Chesterton. See, the thing with Chesterton is that he's very good with words. He's an absolute wordsmith. And you can see this in a lot of his work. I read Orthodoxy, and I've read some of his poems. But to be perfectly honest, I don't actually like a lot of his work. When I was reading Orthodoxy, you can tell he's very good with words, he's very good at rhetoric, but that's exactly his big flaw. His over-reliance on wording and rhetoric somewhat damages it because he doesn't present arguments most of the time. Most of the time he relies on tricks and verbal trickery. For example, if you read just the first chapter of Orthodoxy, you'll immediately notice he's constantly backhandedly insulting people. And he's constantly making witticisms and jokes, but he doesn't present very strong arguments. He does have an argument, he does have a thesis, and he does, build upon it. But a lot of his oratorical or rhetorical strength is just about mocking those who would oppose him or mocking opposing arguments. I don't personally like that style. It's strong, it works. A good orator uses that sort of style. If you look at the classics, that's visible in some of, for example, Shakespeare's piece about where the funeral oration to Caesar, where Mark Antony sort of induces the crowd into a frenzy against the opponents of Caesar by praising their virtue, is this sort of rhetorical mockery in a sense. But I'm not hugely a fan of that personally. I do like Chesterton's work on economics. The idea of distributism is good, but what distributism really needs is a couple of economists to go through it and to actually do some of the data and work and so on. That's mostly what I have to say. It's a nice poem all in all. And Lepanto, of course, I hope that anyone listening to this knows about the Battle of Lepanto and what it was about, but it was the turning of the tide against the Turks in the Mediterranean. Up until then, the Turks had, without being stopped, expanded all the way from Anatolia into Europe, raided the coasts of Italy and France and Spain, and Greece, of course, which they had conquered by then. And Lepanto was sort of a holy crusade, as it's made clear in the piece, by a multinational coalition of Christian nations. Spaniards, a lot of German mercenaries, Greek sailors, Italians, not many French, no Brits. It was very Latin sort of crusade against the Turks. And it was the Battle of Lepanto, and about a century later, the Battle at the Gates of Vienna, which marked the furthest expansion of the Ottoman Turks. Lepanto sort of broke the back of the Ottoman navy and made sure they couldn't raid for a long time. Although smaller raids by the Algeri pirates and the Berbers continued on, and the Barbary corsairs continued on until the American navy, funnily enough, broke Algiers and destroyed the pirate strongholds on the Barbary coast. Why it was the Americans that had to do this and we couldn't have done it, or the French or someone, I don't really know why, but that's what it is. Anyway, Lepanto is a very important historical battle, and especially in the current context where Turkey is not exactly our friend here in Europe, that's maybe something to remember here and there, to commemorate.
Of